Hi, I'm Dr. Evan Erickson from Liberty Ion. I'm excited to give you this talk today. I've done it a couple times before with live audiences, but I figured, okay, this had good reception, so I'll share it with you all now on YouTube, the Swedish YouTube, and also maybe the regular YouTube, and maybe a podcast, but I don't know. So who are Liberty Ion? I founded Liberty Ion. I'm a chemist by background. I first worked in fuel cells for my PhD, then I went into lithium-ion batteries. I did a lot of grants during that time in academia. I also did a private one with BASF, worked on. And then we're working on a low cobalt cathode for lithium-ion batteries, decided to spin it out. And that company, Tex Power, we funded initially through Department of Energy, SBIR, or Small Business Investment Research Grant, and then also a DoD OTA, or Other Transactional Authority, prototyping grant. So I've done a lot of grants. So I got a paid exit from Tex Power about a year and a half ago or so, and subsequently I've been helping companies with customer development and fundraising in the battery space, but also doing a lot of grant writing with companies, helping them get funding, Department of Energy, Department of Defense, NSF, and then in disparate areas. So not only lithium ion, sodium ion, fuel cells, hydrogen fuel cells, did some offshore wind work and some environmental work, and also recently even a HIV clinic that we got funded from HRSA. So I can do whatever the annoying paperwork that you have to deal with, I can deal with it for you. So you can reach out to us. So our main activities are customer development. We also do patent drafting. I'm experienced in that and writing patents, and I can help you get it cheaper than a lawyer as well. And then, of course, grant management and applications, which we'll talk about today. And then financing and planning. So I did a Series A where we raised around 18 million on that. We're like 20 in the end. But so the question is, moving on to grants, why apply to grants? Well, of course, there's the funding, and everybody knows about that. That's not the only reason, but also it gives you credibility and publicity. That helps, of course, with both with customers and with fundraising, with your suppliers as well, and then, of course, customer development. You can use these grants, actually put them on your team, so that the prototype or the material that you get made goes directly to your customer. So that's one thing that was very successful with a lot of companies that I've worked with. You can get validation and testing. There's other forms of funding. There's one called a CRADA, where and I won't go into detail here, but you can get testing paid for at a national lab. And then also can lead to government contracts, for example, if you get it to a DoD one especially, because they're very into purchasing what you make. So, and ultimately too, the biggest thing that I always like to ignore is forcing yourself to write down your ideas into a business plan and self-criticize. You can really find your holes. Either the reviewer will tell it to you directly, or you'll be able to confront them and then address them. And so I think it's a really good process. It forces you all to do that with a timeline. So I recommend doing this. So there are many different types of grants. There's research type grants. And so I have just an example here of SBIR, STTR. Often these are about research to develop some sort of technology, some sort of platform, so software can work as well. There's also prototype type grants where you're paid to make a prototype of a widget, of a battery, of whatever that some testing center will get. A lot of times they're both related. There can also be demonstration and pilot funding. These can be up to, the bipartisan infrastructure law was, $100 million minimum project size. That's for a demonstration facility. So those types of grants are pretty rare, but 5 million, 10 million for pilots, that's fairly common, from DOE. They also have state and regional grants, and you may be surprised about, the workforce commissions. For instance, here's Texas Workforce Commission. They have subsidies for if you're going to need to train someone on your team, that can be subsidized as well. So I highly recommend you look into that onto your state's website where you're living at. And I was surprised recently with a company I work with out of Louisiana, and actually Louisiana, deep red state, has quite a substantial amount of support for Louisiana companies that could do, for example, it can pay for international conferences, and so that's something that I don't buy myself because okay, a couple thousand for a ticket seems a little bit too spendy. So, okay, but if you see a conference that's good and check with your state, of course, you could get refunded for up to 14 grand per year in Louisiana. And then another one I've been looking into recently, especially considering the recent environment with the federal grant system being in disarray, private foundations often step up in times of need, such as now. And so, and they're going to be focused on sort of, passion projects like healthcare. So if it'll be about, the one I had an example was HIV, environmental, of course, and then education, these type of things. And then it could also be a ethnic component, or for women-owned businesses, things like that. So check into it. So if you're the Swedish Society may pay for Liberty Ion. I'm just kidding, but also it's a woman-owned company actually, because 51% by my wife. So grants.gov. All right, where to find grants? Excuse me. Grants.gov is the first way to start. You can go on there and set up an automatic search that gives you notifications. I tend not to notice it myself very well because it comes in your email box and it can be kind of a blast. And so I think you actually should go into the specific agency websites. And here's just one of the energy efficiency and renewable energy. So EERE is a big one for DOE that has kind of pilot projects and things like that. So that's that's one of them, but you can look at the specific ones. Then for DoD, there are consortia, and you can find a list of consortia. This is their mechanism for distributing funding from the DOE, or DoD, excuse me, the Department of Defense. They have these separate consortia. Sometimes you have to pay money to be a member of it, but often they'll have the first year waived, and so you can try it out, see if it's actually worth spending. But if the cost is usually around $500 to be a member for a small business. So it's somewhat criticized as pay to play, but it can be usually it's free the first year, so you can at least try it out. And one new one that I found, foundation directory, since I've been looking at different private foundations. This is a private search. You can pay for it, or often at the libraries it's for free, and so you can just go there. It spits out everything, a list of these different private foundations and their website address, yada yada, and you can export it as an Excel and then email it to yourself. So I know Liberty Ion is out of Houston. I know I have a ridiculous Minnesotan accent, but we're from Houston, Texas, and so actually their library here has this subscription to the foundation directory, and so you're able to get it from the library. And so check your local library for that, or if you think it's worth it while, it pools a lot of resources. And there are other ones as well. And then, of course, your friendly local grant writer, such as Liberty Ion, can help you. And I've done that projects a few times. I said, Doug, just survey, give me a list of places where I can apply, and any ones that are working right now, and that's a few billable hours. So not a heavy lift, and can get you focused on what you can be doing and plan out your year of adventure in grants. So let's go to SBIRs. This is kind of the first small grant that a lot of companies will get, and they're made specifically for small companies. So SBIR is Small Business Investment Research. So it's a type of grant for small businesses. Every agency is required a certain percentage, I think around 3% of their funding, to be allocated towards small businesses, and this is the funding mechanism that they use, and so through these grants. And it's a very popular program. Both Democrats, Republicans, even Project 2025 says that this is one of the most successful small business programs out there, and so it will not be going away, even though you may have heard about it, having issues and things like that with grants. These are something that everybody agrees. Small businesses are good, and this is a way to get funding. And so you've got most agencies have it. Department of Energy, of course, is my favorite one to go to. Right now, it's a little bit murky what's going to happen with that, but it will be coming back eventually. Department of Defense, they release almost on a monthly basis. There's new ones out, so you can just refresh that, on a weekly basis and check and see what's out there. But also, NASA I've done before, NSF. There's also NIH and NIST, USDA. Wherever you're working in, whatever your small business is, usually there will be a small business investment research grant. So that they also have a one called STTR. That's a technology transfer research, and that's where you partner with a university. So if you have a co-founder that's from a university, we did it at my previous company, and so that's an option where they get more funding. For this, you need about 67% of the funding has to go to the small business, but if you have STTR, I think it's 50% or so. So it's a way. STTRs are funded at a somewhat higher rate, so sometimes you can apply for both at the same time, as long as you're within the sweet spot of the both funding, and so that's a special consideration to look at. So if it funds both, see if you guys can do both, and I would apply to both if that's possible. Sorry for flipping back and forth. So the different phases for SBIRs, this is different on each agency, but for DOE, for example, often it's phase 1. It's a 1-year contract period, $200,000. They can be $100,000 at the low end, maybe for the EPA, and 6 months as well. But generally, that's the rate. And how they do it at the DOE is that they provide the award for each topic area to at least 2 startups, and then one of those startups gets the phase 2. So the phase 2 is an application that's due 1 year later, so actually 9 months after you start for the DOE. Then a year later, you'll have another application due for phase 2, and that's where the bigger money comes in. So that's where 1.1 million for the company, but over 2 years. And so that's where you can really start to have traction with your company. So if you start off $200,000, it doesn't buy you much, but get a researcher, pay for one of your salaries maybe, and then and some supplies for it, but maybe not even brick and mortar at that point. But phase 2 is where once you get phase 1, phase 2 is about a 50% success rate, so it's a very good opportunity. Okay, so first step for all of you, make sure that you have a SAM.gov account. This is where you register your company. You get a unique entity identifier, UEI. And so this is, every company needs it. It's free. If people say that you need to pay money, they're lying to you. There's a lot of companies that will help you do it. I'll help you do it too, but it can be a little bit wonky. But I can just walk you through it, and it's quick and easy. And so you can also get a cage code if you're going to apply to defense projects. You have to get a cage code. That's a second level, and they send your information to the Defense Logistics Agency, and it gets verified that your tax ID and whatnot is set up. So this start on early. Sometimes it goes down, and so you want to get it done before you do the application. You don't necessarily need to do it before a letter of intent. So that's the next step, but and you'll see here, you don't necessarily need to do SAM.gov before the letter of intent, which we'll get to in a little bit, but it doesn't hurt you to get it done, and it probably takes an hour or so your first time, and if you have any problems, shoot me an email and I'll help get that worked out with you. So so then the next step is find your SBIR. So and you can look at the different websites. So look up Department of Energy SBIR, and so here you've just got a screenshot. You have the topics right there and the due dates, and so mind your due dates. The first thing that usually is done is a letter of intent, and so for instance this one was due on August 2023. So mind your due dates. You got to get these in. You usually need a letter of intent or a concept paper or something like that to apply for grants beforehand. And what they do is that they use this white paper to, first of all, inform you if you're not on topic, and that way then you don't spend time writing a full application. And the second thing that they do is they look for reviewers, because it can be difficult for them to wrangle up enough reviewers for all these different proposals. And so that once they know, oh, we need a lot more reviewers in, this silicon anode, topic, then they can email a bunch of people and do some outreach. And so then you'll get some response. Sometimes, for instance, with the DOE, there is no response if you are on topic, and so no news is good news in that case. Sometimes they give you some critique, even if they say that you can apply. It just depends on the agency and the specific application. Then you'll have the full applications, and we'll get into what that is in a little bit. And then you'll get, it's a waiting game, and so you'll hear back, award notification. They almost never say the award notification on the day that they initially set. That always moves, but they will not extend the due dates. So do not play with the due dates. I had once where it was a sort of winter storm down in Texas, and we were going to be late on our application, but actually we got it in, and we did get that grant. But I emailed him and the project manager, and the project manager responded that, oh yes, this seems like a good reason to delay, but we don't issue delays beforehand, so you have to take a risk if you're delayed. So don't risk it, just get it in, and yeah, the due dates are important. So then you have your full application, if it's approved, once you get your critique back. So here we'll just quickly go through. Most of them are kind of minor documents, but there's a lot of annoying paperwork that you have to do, and so that's where Liberty Ion can help. And so reach out at info@libertyion.com if you would like me to help you with your proposal, or my team of grant experts. So the first one is there's these SF forms, special forms. This is a 424, just describes the business. Not a big deal, but you got to get all the information. They make you get like a zip +4, always annoying because you're like, I have no idea what my +4 number is, but you got to find it. You need your UEI, EIN. There's a budget form. I'll show you this. That's a little bit more important. Budget justification. Also, along with it, that's describes how you got those numbers. There's a thing called current and pending support. That's if you've had grants before, so then you'll know about how to write it out. And then also if you can't double dip on grants. So if you have a grant that's on the same topic, that's a no-no, and you can't report the same data on two grants because you're getting double paid, and you go to jail, directly to jail. Project narrative, that's the bulk. I'll show you the outline of it. That's where all the technical information is. Now recently they've been doing these disclosure of foreign relationships type things, or foreign entities of concern. And so, yeah, don't take money from Russia, China, Iran, or North Korea, because North Korea, lots of investors from North Korea are reaching out, right? But yeah, that's one no-no for federal grants, so stay away from those 4 countries. Letter of commitments. So this is for usually for the smaller grants, it's going to be commitments from your subcontractors. So you have to think about your team members who would be on those as a subcontractor, and then you would get a letter from them saying, yes, we're committed to this grant, and I can show you a template. Letters of support also help. I can show you an example of that here. That's from someone from the industry, so maybe a customer. You could get a big guy like General Electric or something like that, where they say, yes, we want to see this company succeed. If they succeed, that's good for us. Then a Department of Energy for FFRDC, so it's Federally Financed Research and Development Corporation. So this is these are sort of national labs. The DOE ones are national labs. Always good to get a national lab onto your DOE proposals, because the Department of Energy loves to fund the Department of Energy. So I would go for that. And then if you have a subcontractor, they need a budget form. Then a budget justification for each of those, of course. So same thing I'll show you later on your budget. Each subcontract needs a budget. It may be easier to use them as a vendor. So if it's a smaller amount of money, it's a gray area. But if they're a subcontractor, then they have a specific work plan and everything that they'll need to do for it. Whereas if they're a vendor, and then they also have to have the budget and the outline, their name will go on the contract. with the DOE, and it'll be published as you guys are working on a project. So it also pushes your relationship forward if they're a subcontractor. But a lot of times these, especially big guys, don't want to do that, and so then they'll just say, okay, we'll be a vendor, we'll do those, we'll make those cells for you or whatever for $5,000, whatnot, 10 grand, 20 grand. And well, that size is okay to be a vendor. If it's more, we used a vendor, I think like 50 grand, maybe even more. So you can be pretty high and still be a vendor. And for them, then they've got no burden of any paperwork, so they like to do that. But for you as a small business, it's good to get them on as a subcontractor, if you can do it. But it also, you have to get all of their paperwork in, and wrangling the paperwork from your subs is a pain in the butt. So forgive my French, yes. And then commercialization plan. We'll get into that here in a little bit. So here's the intermezzo for grants docs. So maybe we'll start with the budget. And so this is just a budget. You can look for different budgets off of the internet. The DOE uses an indirect rate. There are kind of four different buckets. You have direct, so any project costs, and we can get into this. That'd probably be a separate presentation about indirect costs. But direct costs are anything that you can directly subscribe to the project. For example, we bought this silicon for the cell. Okay, then that's specifically for this project. That's obviously supplies cost, for that project. Or there's a worker that's working on this project. So that's where you would name them here, and you would name them. So the principal investigator always has to be on there, and the PI in the biz. They call it, so that's principal investigator. Generally, that's one of your top people in your team. Could be yourself, and you can say how many. You have to say how many calendar months you work, or how many hours. Often it'll be divided into. So generally, you need to work like at least 10% is the bare minimum as the PI, and this is going to be somebody that you'll have a resume or biosketch or whatever that is submitted with the proposal. So it should be someone, if someone has worked with the DOE before, that'd be great. If they're well known in the field, that's great. So somebody that's got some bona fides, should be your principal investigator. Then you can have somebody that's not named, like a technician here. So we had this one for they're working at 80% capacity. So if you look at the formula, 0.8 times 9, because it's a 9-month grant here that we're proposing, and so here it is at 40%, but you could go lower than that. Then what you have is a fringe rate. Excuse me. So you have a fringe rate that you can multiply on there. Generally, this is something where you have to use your accounting. You calculate based on, and we can go into a longer talk about it. But all of the benefits that an employee has, like their vacation days, the health care, the FICA, taxes, Social Security, federal income tax, all that stuff. That's the employer side, right? So all of that usually ends up being 20-25%, and so plus minus. And so that's something to throw on. This will be a direct fringe off of that. So that's one of the buckets. Then they'll ask for travel. Often in SBIRs, they'll say you have to travel to DC for the first PI meeting, and so that can be in there, and they'll have some ground rules. But generally, no other travel is allowed on them, so you don't have to worry about it. And then what you do, kind of max out the supplies. There is often this TABA, so technical and business assistance is part where the DOE does this. Also, DoD sometimes does. Some of them don't. DLA doesn't do it. But this is assistance to help with commercialization efforts. In the specific call, it'll let you know the ground rules on that. Liberty Ion does do technical and business assistance, so reach out if you want some help with that. And it can be with patent drafting, it can be with customer development, it can be getting you letters of support for the phase 2, which are very critical, things like that. So, and then you have your indirect cost. So here I put down 37%. It's probably not going to be as high for you, maybe like 30% for a new company. But indirect is everything you need to keep the business running. So like the rent, lights, electricity, maybe you have an admin. So like the larger the company, actually, the larger this number gets ballooned up to. At universities, it gets up to 53% at UT Austin. I think they publish them online. But you have to negotiate this. There is a de minimis value, which I believe is 15%. That includes fringe. So what you would do if you want to use a de minimis, you don't have the negotiation period, but you will have to. Then you don't have to do this negotiation. I'll show you later. Negotiation takes a long time. So this is something to calculate. I'll have another presentation on how to do it at a later period. But yeah, so it's important to include that. At least 15%, and then that's de minimis. Then you also have your fee. So fee is allowed generally 7% on this, and so you put the 7% of the total value. So it's kind of set on what the max is, which at 200,000 is $13,084. And so then what I usually do, max out the supplies and get yourself to the 206,500 or whatever the max allowed is for the grant. So that's kind of the budget document. You have to go through a budget explanation, and so they'll have it. Here's a template from the DOE, and you just go through each of the categories and come up with your numbers, how you had gotten it, and they go through this with you if you're awarded. So it's important to fill out. If you're missing something, they let you fill it in. So it's it just takes longer than on your negotiation. So it's better to do beforehand and make it as complete as possible. We'll go through the commercialization plan first, since that's what popped up. Commercialization plan, this is sometimes this will be included in the main technical volume or project narrative document, but sometimes it's separate. With the DOE, it's separate. This is where you just describe sort of a mini business plan. So sometimes they'll have a statement like this, like company name here estimates cumulative sales of X and cumulative licensing revenues of Y during the first 10 years of commercialization. So that's something you got to put. So you got to come up with a financial model to back this up, and they will not check on it. And everybody knows it's going to be BS, especially as a small company. So just do your best. That's what you got to do. And as a company, you should continuously update that and reflect on, okay, is this going to be reasonable and for our pricing estimates, things like that. There's marketing opportunity you have to describe. So look at, what is the total addressable market, and are we doing a beachhead strategy? What are we doing? You need to describe your company and team. So you got bona fides. Where'd you get your tech come from? What's your is it out of the university? Did you work on this on the patent? So do you have a lab? These sort of things. Intellectual property goes into it more deeply on your patent. People worry about freedom to operate. Nobody's going to sue you as a small business that's not making any money. So don't get too overworked about your freedom to operate. Usually the patent space is a bit of a game. That's another talk, but just say you have the freedom to operate. And then your revenue forecast. So then often they'll have an Excel spreadsheet that you have to include with this, where you forecast your revenue over the next 10 years and make the best assumptions that you can with that. Then the bulk of the project of proposal is the project narrative, and so this is the template. You'll have a title page. They've got a secrecy sort of statement, and so you can just say every page is secret if you'd like. I've had a FOIA request. They do allow FOIA requests on these, but you have data rights for 20 years, and so you can black out everything they give you but you only give you a few days to do it. So you have like a 3-day turnaround. But so anyways, if you pre-do it now, then you're set. If there's a FOIA request, you won't have to worry about it. But really, you only get a FOIA request if you're doing well. So it's a good problem to have, and then you'll be able to, because otherwise people are wasting their time too on I want to see what they did. Then usually it'll be a lot of sort of introduction. Identify your technology first. There'll be some fluff like anticipated public benefits, and then your specific technical objectives, a work plan, you know, your schedule for it, if you have any facilities or equipment that need to be rented. Equipment, anything over $5,000 with the DOE is considered equipment. I would, you know, one caveat to that is that if you use DOE funds to pay for equipment, it is officially still owned by the federal government. So I recommend against doing that. You can just buy supplies unless there's a big purchase. Like for this phase 2, you got $1 million. You probably want to make some big purchases, like a glove box or something that costs 30 grand, you know? So that's one you would do. And I've done it before where they ask you, you have to put forward these SF forms, the special forms, every quarter, reporting the status of that equipment, where it's at, whatnot. And then at the end of the project, you can request to keep it. And so you just say that it's necessary for your business to keep operating, and that it's very dirty and heavy, and nobody wants it. So and they've given it to me before, so it's not a big deal. But if you don't have to buy it, if you can buy supplies with it instead, buy supplies, because supplies are consumables; they go away. Research institution is if you're working with a university there, and then other consultants, subcontractors. Of course, for TAWA, Liberty Ion could be your consultant. Also for subcontracting too, we can make cells for you if you need, and do some independent third-party verification. So then, also, it's best to find other team members, and I can show you here too, just sort of for that letter of support or commitment letter kind of template, what you want to use in a little bit. But it's best to find out where your holes are as a company and get a subcontractor that can fill that hole. So if you make, you know, if you make the positive electrode and you need someone to make the negative electrode, you do that. You know, you get them to make it, and then somebody that makes the cell. So build a team that will actually get you a customer and a supplier that fill it all. If you can fill it all, fill it all. Of course, phase 1, there's not much work, or not much funds, so maybe it's not doable in phase 1. So you start with the basics. Then there's some other stuff. Phase 2 funding commitment. You don't have to worry about that. But if you have some private funding, that's great. They love to hear this. The biggest thing project managers worry about is that most of the time these SBIRs do not advance onto a commercial product. So I recommend heavily to show them that you're going to be able to commercialize this. And if they see that will happen, that's a huge feather in their cap, you know, that they were able to commercialize something. Then there's bibliography and references cited, you know, some other forms. Okay, there used to be this peer, that's sort of a DEI thing that got phased out here. So yeah, that's maybe I'll show a quick letter of support here. Here's a commitment letter template. And so if you need templates for all these, I can get you all the templates. It's kind of off the shelf. Well, every one is different, so you got to look at each one. But usually most grants we are applying to, so it's very cheap for you to get the documents from me, because I will spend, if I already have them, I will just find them in 15 minutes or so. So yeah, you just get you send something like this to them. So usually the process for getting a letter of support or a letter of commitment, talk to them first, of course, always. I say, hey, I want to get you, I have this proposal I'm going to do. I really could use your letter of support, and do your introduction talk, whatever. Say, would you be okay to do a letter of support? There's no commitment, whatever. If they're a subcontractor, they say, yeah, I've got to do a commitment. So what's your funding? You get to decide on how much of the funds they're going to use, and then you have them fill out a commitment letter like this. So that's kind of the bulk of the proposal. Then all the other sort of forms. Then say you get the grant. Then what happens? You get an email, and you've got, that you get one email. And here's one when I got one on June 10th, saying that we got the award. I lost $1 on there. That's that's one thing about budgets. Got to play with them right, otherwise you can lose money. And then after 78 emails, more than a month and a half, finally I said, oh, you can reach out to this ASAP to get your money, your first money, which ASAP is the ASP.gov from the Treasury Department, and it basically is almost like you open it up, it's almost like a checking account where you just got $200,000 there in your checking account. So it's a interesting feeling, and it's sort of the honor code when you get it, and you just withdraw the money as it goes. So it's. But anyways, I wanted to point out grant negotiation is the next step. Liberty Ion can help you with that because it can be when you do it like this. This is the first time I was doing it, and 100% by myself, and yeah, it can go quicker. But it can be a lot. Then you have grant management, and I won't get into this now, but you can go through, how do you allocate stuff and mark, and then just with QuickBooks or whatever, because you have to prepare these reports on a quarterly statement. You've got annual ones, so we can help with that, and then have your records of withdrawals and how you come up with your totals because it's a reimbursement style grant. Just kind of a quick run through of where to apply for grants. And I'll try to throw this into the meeting notes, the YouTube notes, the DoTube notes, the podcast notes. But there's the SBIR sites. So DOE has one. There's a DOD one to look at. NSF, Department of Transportation. Oops, sorry. There's also the specific offices for the DOE. For example, ERE Exchange or Infrastructure Exchange is the new one. Was the MESC that they had made for the BIL. Then there's ARPA-E, and there's consortia lists you can find, and then foundations. So yeah, my email is evan@libertyion.com, or you can use info@libertyion.com. Maybe I'll fuzz out my phone number, but yeah, thank you. Feel free to reach out to me, and we'll be happy to help you with your grant proposal. I can do all the annoying paperwork for you. At Liberty Ion, we have a team of people passionate about filling out detailed forms. I got my wife her green card without a lawyer, so that's something, right? All right, thanks.
Please like and subscribe.